Okay, recording started. And we're gonna jump into SDLC where we left off. So this document right here, this diagram is pretty much everything you need to know in order to be a good QA, in order for you to be in software industry. And we spent quite a bit of time last week talking about these things, and it's important that everybody understands ins and out of this. Before I start, I want to ask you guys, I want to give you an opportunity to ask questions about this. Does anyone have any questions or concerns or suggestions?
Can we go over cutover phase?
Yeah, well, we didn't go over configuration phase, cutover phase, and maintenance phase last week, so we'll do this today. Any other questions? All right, so I'm gonna go over everything quickly. So STLC, you guys know this is a framework. This is a process of building an entire software product. Starts with user requirement phase. In user requirement phase, user or client comes in with their ideas and needs. They usually come in with a plain document called URS. URS stands for user requirement specifications. They come in, so try to note down the keywords here, right? Your clients is a keyword, URS is another keyword, and they have meetings with the IT companies. So in IT companies, there are representatives from the IT companies. They sit with the clients and understand their needs and their requirement, right here in this user requirement phase. So two groups of people. Group one is the client, and group two is the IT company representative. Either is project managers or business analysts. So most cases, the appropriate cases is the business analyst. They understand the requirement, and then there are timeline and other things gets finalized here. So that's the user requirement phase, right? And then once that is understood and finalized, then we go into planning phase. In planning phase, we have our business analyst. So now you see a boundary here. Now this requirement, this document gets moved into this planning phase. And in planning phase, this is internal to IT companies, right? The folks who's working on this project. So now this document gets moved here in planning phase. In planning phase, business analysts, they turn this URS document to more technical document called SRS. So URS is user requirement specification. SRS is system requirement specification. So that's more of a technical document. So really three keywords here, right? URS, SRS, and business analyst, right? BA. So business analyst takes this URS and converts it to an SRS. And then when SRS is finalized, this gets pushed into designer phase, development phase, and testing phase. So in designer phase, designer starts creating their mockup or the diagram or architecture, right? In design phase. And development phase, the document gets shared to the developers. They start writing their source code, the code in a programming language. So let's say Java, JavaScript, Ruby, Python, whatever the language the company is using. In here, the group of developers, they start coding that application. And as an output of coding, you get a UI-based application, right? So it gets done here. The actual work gets done here. Actual construction gets done here. So in this phase, you have multiple keywords. One is, of course, who's sitting here is the developers with what? With the SRS document and doing what? doing their job, which is to build that application. By what? By coding it, right? So these are the keywords for this phase. Then once that is done, this application gets moved to system testing phase. And system testing phase is where you and I, as a QA, quality assurance engineers, or software testers, we sit here, we start our STLC process. STLC stands for Software Testing Lifecycle. And there's so much to testing lifecycle, which we will learn today onward. So this is what happens here, right? And once we complete our testing, we said, okay, the application we have tested, whatever the issues we found here, we reported to developers. They fixed it. There are back and forth here, right? So this group of people, they build this application. This group of people, they test this application. When you're testing something, chances are you'll find issues, right? And once we find issues, we will raise them. And this group of people, they will fix it again. So they're back and forth here. So eventually we will settle and everything will be good. And once we reach that point, we would say, okay, guys, this application looks good. Let's move forward. Give it back to the client. So now here, we would say, okay, we want to give it back to the client because it looks good. Now, right here, client would say, okay, thank you very much. You've done your job. Now, I want to make sure that you've done your job properly. So here they will come in with their own testers. These testers called UAT, User Acceptance Tester. So in here, user acceptance testing happens, and we review our work. So we review the work here, and they also do the work here, review it here. And if they find issues, they'll, raise it. If they don't, then this application gets accepted and it gets pushed to production. Production is right here, is where application goes live, where you and I and everybody else has access to it. So you notice like it's outside the boundary, meaning this is where the IT folks lives. And once this application gets pushed out of this phase, out of this wall, now everybody has access to it. Yeah, you can take an example of Facebook. Now you have access to it, but when they were developing it under these boundaries, inside these boundaries, you and I didn't have access to it. Only those folks who are working on it had access to it. So right here is production phase, is where you have access to it. Then, application is live. People are using it, but we do have multiple phases here. We have cutover phase, maintenance phase. Cutover phase is known for user training, so user documentation or other configuration. So a lot of the time, what happens is when an application is built for a certain purpose, it's easy to use, but in some cases, application is complex. I'm not sure if you guys face any, if you guys use any application where you needed guidance to navigate through that application. There are applications, once you go to industry, you'll know and you'll see that application requires some guidance to understand how to navigate through those applications. So this is where user training happens. This is where um, user training happens, and if application requires any configuration, this is where it happens. Then maintenance phase. Maintenance phase is where application gets upgraded. You know how you see notification about different applications. For example, iOS gets new version and any other application. Last week I was showing you Chrome browser upgrades. So an application when it gets built, that's not the end of it. And every single application gets upgraded. You build an application, then you get new ideas, then you upgrade it, and the upgrades happens in maintenance phase. right? So there is one more phase that we didn't talk about is a configuration phase. It's also known as CM library, meaning configuration management phase, basically. So this is a phase where you store all the documentations. Every single phases here you see, it deals with documentations. This industry is process oriented. It deals with a lot of documentations. In configuration phase, so you need a placeholder for a documentation, right? So, each of the documentation gets saved here. But, when you go to actual work, they may not call it configuration management phase. They may call it something else. Now, industry is changing rapidly. Each company uses different mechanism to store the documentation. But if some uses shared drive, some uses Confluence, some uses something else. So when you know there is a tool or there is a place where they're storing all the documentation, then you know it's this phase, configuration management phase. That's where they store all the documentation. I can I can probably give an example of my work. Give me 1 second. I will give you an example of. Okay, so this is my actual project, and if you look at this one, right, this is this is our configuration management library. In here, so we use Confluence. Confluence is a tool of Jira family. So everything you see here is documentation. Everything. So we use this as our configuration. And everything you see here, every little thing is documentation, and we create documentation for our work. Everything we do is here, right? So, if you see here, it doesn't say configuration phase. It wouldn't say it because our company, uses this tool, and this tool calls Confluence, and that's where we store our documentation. So in other words, you need to be smart when you're at work, and you need to relate this to your actual work to understand what they're doing, where they're doing it. So that's configuration phase. So that's pretty much it. Any questions? Okay, no questions. That's awesome. Now, anyone wants to try explaining this? Anyone from new or old batch? I'm gonna I'm not gonna call out anyone, but if you're brave enough, please go ahead. Yeah, I know you're gonna make mistakes, but this is good practice for all of you guys.
So, Kadir bhai, um, first I have a question, then I'll do the best I can to explain it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you just showed us a bunch of files and folders, and you said this is the configuration phase, right?
Hmm.
And so you said when you get into the real work place, it will be called something else. So configuration phase is, sorry, basically a place that holds files or like folders or information. That's what it is.
Documentations.
Yeah, documentation. That's it, right? Nothing more
Yeah,
than that.
yeah,
All right, so I'll go into explaining the best I can. And
please.
so start with user requirement phase, right?
Yeah,
Okay, one second. All right, so basically what STLC is, it stands for Software Development Lifecycle. So it is it's a process consisting of all these steps in these pictures of how software developers design, then they develop, and then they test, and then they maintain a software through the end once it's done. So the first is the user requirement phase. So where the user tells us like what it wants, what what should be the purpose of the software, what we're looking for, and then you go into planning it and how you're gonna organize it, how you're gonna situate the software, how it's gonna run, and then you go into designing it. Over here, you create like a blueprint for the software in the designing phase, and like all the different parts that will interact, uh, and like how the data will be stored. And then from the designing phase, we move on to the development phase. So this is where like the coding happens. You design specifications, and again, it's a little bit of the blueprint. And then we go ahead on to testing the software, the system testing. And then this is where we find any issues, or what the professional term is bugs, I think, right? Uh, any bugs are in the software or errors. And from there, we move on to the UAT phase. So UAT phase was 1 second. Okay, so UAT phase is when we go back to the user and we give the user back to use the software and see how it runs for them. And then if everything is good, then we go into the production phase and the cutover phase and the maintenance phase. So the maintenance phase is basically until the software is running, we just constantly check up on it, if it's working, if there are any errors, anything needs to be fixed, stuff like that. Yeah, that was the best of my abilities as of now.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for stepping
I,
up.
I forgot what the cutover phase was, but I'm sorry about that. That's why I
No,
think
no.
you should start writing it down.
Yeah. So see, the thing is, like, when we're explaining, if you take the notes of the keywords, this is so simple. But if you don't, if you feel like, no, I'm just talking generally, not just to you, generally speaking to everyone. If you take notes for the each of the phases, now you're good to go. But if you feel that, okay, I don't want to do that, I just want to, focus on the lecture, that's also fine. But go back and watch the recording and try to take the notes. Otherwise, there's no alternative. Otherwise, it's never going to be perfect. You did good. You did very good. Only thing is, right, keywords were missing, right? If you talk about user comment phase, what are the main keywords and the purposes, right? Those were missing, and everything else, right? And when you're explaining something, when you're answering something, don't be hesitant, be confident. Even if you are saying the wrong thing, you need to be able to sell yourself. If you're questioning when you're answering, like, that's not gonna do it. For example, if you're saying, in planning phase, that maybe this happens, or does this happen, things like this, that's not gonna get it done. So in the interview, they're looking for professionals who has been there, done it. And for us to be able to look like one, we need to act like one. And your training starts here from this course only. So keep in mind. But overall, I think you did very good for the beginning, basically. All right.
Thank you, and I'll go back and I'll work on it more. Thank you.
I appreciate it, brother. So again, please take notes, guys. Please, please, please take notes. Even if you know it, take notes. Otherwise, it's not gonna work. Trust me when I say it. Because when you're explaining, it's crystal clear. The moment we stop, you don't have anything to go back to, then things are gonna be lost. All right, so SDLC, I hope you all have clear understanding of SDLC. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to talk about other things. So in SDLC, right, so this is SDLC, the way we build a software product, right? This is software development life cycle. But within SDLC, there are different type of methodologies that people follows. So if you look at the definition, Well, first the question, what are some of the different types of methodology in STLC? STLC has several type of model. So these are like models or methodology. But so if you look at all of them, right, we have waterfall, V model, agile, incremental, spiral, fish, rope. So these seven, they exist, but out of them, first three are the ones that are being used in the industry. Waterfall is one, V model is the other one, and the agile is the third one. So these three model that people or the industry follows. Within that, agile is probably 95%. Sorry, 90% is agile, 5% is waterfall, and 5% is hybrid between agile and waterfall. I haven't seen anyone using vModel. I haven't seen anyone using these things, but vModel is mostly used in government project type of thing. And I was never part of government project. I don't think, any one of you will be part of government project. So for us, vModel is not that important. For us, the most important one is the agile, and then second one is the waterfall. So we'll talk about it. And rest of them, just know the names and you don't need to worry about anything else. So again, this is SDLC. And within SDLC, there are different models that industry follows. And these models are this, right? These seven. Out of them, these top three are the popular one that we are going to talk about eventually. This looks like waterfall diagram. Waterfall is a sequential development methodology where everything happens in a sequence. It's like water flow goes in one direction. If you look at this, right, and this is very similar to STLC. Analysis phase, requirement phase, design phase, development phase, testing phase, implementation, or the deployment phase. So I'm going to come back to all of this. I don't want to confuse you with this, right? I want to stick here and understand testing phase, right? So we understand SDLC. I gave you a quick glimpse of what is after SDLC, right? But I want to stay here and talk about this phase. We need to understand this phase, right? This is where we, as software test engineers, we sit here, we live here, we earn our bread and butter here. Now we need to understand what do we do here, system testing phase. So it's also known as STLC phase, system testing phase or testing phase or STLC phase. So this naming is standard, but understand one thing in IT industry, each company uses, they work in their own way. They use their own terminology and they follow their best practices. If you know this, you would know everything. You would be able to work in any and every company, but do not expect everything to be exactly same from the naming convention to the actual workflow. It varies company to company, but if you know this, you'd be able to work anywhere. So going back to the testing phase, right? Let's talk about what happens in testing phase. And okay. So this is where we are, right? Part 4 STLC. In part 3, there are some remaining items which I will get back to right now. I don't think it makes sense. I think it makes more sense to talk about STLC within the SDLC, right? STLC software testing lifecycle. Again, guys, I want to make sure that you understand. In right here, we said when we explain SDLC, we said in here, we start our STLC process. And this is our STLC right here. STLC software testing lifecycle. So let's understand this. STLC stands for software testing lifecycle. STLC is a sequence of different activities performed by testing team to ensure the quality of the software or the product. So this is the bookish definition of STLC. Straightforward, simple, right? And what is the process of STLC? Here's STLC phases. So within this STLC, we have analysis of the requirement phase, we have test plan phase, we have test cases, we have RTM, we have test bed or test environment creation. We execute our test, we identify and log defects, we track the defects, we create reports right here. It's also known as STAR, Test Analysis Report. Then we participate in different meetings. That's it. So this is our duties, right? When we go to work, these are the things we do, we perform, right? And we're going to learn about each one of them. Without learning this, you cannot be a software tester. This is pretty much a process, and you'll hear me saying this is a process-oriented job. If someone asks you, why do you like to be a QA? And you might get asked this question in your interview. Why did you choose this field? Why do you want to be a QA? What do you like about this field? The answer, your answer should be, it's a process-oriented job, and I like following the process. That's why, I choose this field. That would be one way of answering, and there are more that we'll teach you later. And this question might get asked quite often. So, as part of the process of STLC, we need to learn this, and we need to exercise this STLC workflow, and we need to be good at it, and we'll start from today. So if we talk about the requirement phase, right? Analysis of the requirement phase. If we go back to STLC diagram, this is the requirement phase, right? In STLC, but in STLC, we're also saying analysis of the requirement. What does that mean? It means, right, this is where requirement gets defined, right? Between these two phases, right? Here is the URS, and right here we have the SRS. Between these two phases, requirements gets finalized. Once this requirement gets finalized and shared with us, the very first thing we do, analyze. We analyze the requirement to understand the requirement, to understand what's in it and what we supposed to be building. The application we're supposed to be building, we need to understand prior to building it or testing it. So if you see the analysis of the requirement phase, it relates to this phase, right? Even these two phases. So that's your requirement analysis phase. Then you see we have a test plan phase, right? Test plan phase. So we are testers right here. We need to plan for our testing. Everyone else will be doing their planning too, right? Right here, you see business analysis doing planning. Designer will be there doing their planning within their own workflow. Developers will be doing the same thing. So let's focus on us, right? We testers right here. After understanding this requirement, we're going to create our own plan. And in our plan, we're going to say, we're going to plan out how we're going to perform our testing, right? So that's what we're going to plan right here. After understanding the requirement, we're going to plan our testing, how we're going to do our testing. Once planning is done, we're going to create test cases. The test cases explains the steps we're going to take to test our application. This right here, the third one, this is nothing but creating steps, recording steps that we are going to take to perform our testing. Then we have traceability, right? The RTM. In traceability, we're going to map out our test cases against the requirement. So this is more deeper, and we'll explain when we get there. But overall, I'm just giving you some idea. Okay, don't worry so much about the traceability right now. We will talk about it once we get there. Creating test environment. So of course we right here, we want to test, but we can't just blindly test. We need to create an environment. We need to create a proper environment. That's where we create test environment or test bed. Once all of this is done, then we're gonna execute our test, meaning we're gonna perform our testing, right? Until here, these are the pre-steps of our testing. This is the actual work. That's where we're gonna perform our testing of that application. Now, when we're testing that application, the chances are you are going to be able to identify bugs. And once you identify bugs are defects, right? The issues that is in the application. That's what we're going to find, and we're going to log them. So what does that mean? We're going to document them, or we're going to log them so that developers can go back and look at it and fix it. So we're going to show you how we do this. So, and then once we log the bugs has a life cycle, so we're going to track those bugs to see where they are, how they're being fixed. Once they fix it, we're going to retest it and close it. So yeah, then of course, once everything is done, we're going to create report. We're going to create analysis report of our testing. And throughout the testing phase will last multiple weeks. Depends on the size of the application, could last even months. So again, it depends. Throughout our journey, we're going to participate in different meetings. Many type of meetings are out there. The most important one is the daily stand-up meetings. Daily stand-up happens daily. It's also known as daily Scrum meeting, or daily touch point. Like I said, everyone names things differently, but once you know the standard format, you would know everything. If you're smart enough, you should be able to relate. So daily stand-up meeting is the most popular, and this meeting is pretty much mandatory in every company. It is only 15 minutes long, and team gets on a call and update their statuses. Then we have other meetings, which I don't want to get into right now. I don't want to confuse you, and that is your STLC. So to be a tester, a quality assurance engineer, you need to know all of this. And if you know this, you are already a tester. So if you understand this, and then you are able to execute on all of this, you should have enough to go get a job. So next couple of weeks, we're going to spend practicing this, explaining this one by one. I'm going to start today with requirement phase. How do you analyze the requirement? I'll show you physical requirement, and then we're going to get into those details. But meanwhile, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So the first phase of STLC is the analyzing the requirements. So if you want to describe it in a proper way, what are we gonna say? Like analyze and understanding the requirement of software from SRS or URS?
SRS.
SRS. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so let me show you a couple of requirements. Okay. Requirement can be written in a document like this, or can be written in, like I said, industry is changing, so it can be written in a tool or a platform. We'll show you we'll give you example of all of them. A requirement can be written in one big document like this. So this one is 21 pages long, or requirement can be broken into part by part. So I'll show you a big requirement first. So this is an example of a requirement, and this requirement has project details, right? Orange HRM is the project, my info model, PMI, my info model, PMI, PI, it should be PAIM. Okay, so project requirement specification. So this is the document name. So first part is the project name. Second part is the document name, project functional requirement specification, and this right here is the versioning. Who can explain this? I explained this in the second class or first. Who can explain this versioning? What does this mean? Anyone is able to?
Is it how many times it's been updated?
Yeah,
The
so
version.
what is the first number?
Uh,
One,
First number is the major change.
right, and the second one?
Very medium change means like which is maybe design, the diagram or the color of the logo, something like that. And the third one is very less changes, some little update.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is the major change, this is the medium change, and that last one is the minor change. So this is version 1.0.0, meaning this is, so the major change is the one, because this is the entire document was created. The whole document is the major thing, right? And that's where this one got changed. Now, further upgrade, if they make, let's say they add something, they add a new requirement and whatnot, they will change this one. And if there are some other minor changes, then they will change the most right one. And I know if they are like, let's say they're doing some major requirement changes, then they will come back and upgrade this number. So this is a version number of the documentation. This is directly tied to the documentation. There should be somewhere, not in this document, there is also project versioning. Project also have similar version as well. But you know, if you understand the concept, you're good to go. Great. So this page, so I'm showing you the requirement document. This is the cover page, and this information usually is there in the cover page. Then we have table of contents as usual. Then we have purpose of the document, project overview. This is high level project overview. And then you have individual requirements. So in right here, you see figure 1.0, login to the Orange HRM system, user account has been created. So if you look at this, they're saying this application, till now, this application is just a document. It's not an actual application yet, because we just have the requirement. Once requirement is executed, then it will be an actual application. So right here, they're saying, okay, this application should have a login portal, looks like this, and it should have username, password, and login button there. My model. If you read through it, it will tell you everything. And then you have my info model. And in here, let's see a diagram right here. My info, this is what they want you to build and test. And this is explaining what are the different things it should have. Then it should have a image upload functionality. And this is where they're talking about what is the requirement should be. And you see browse button, upload button, they're talking about everything. They're also talking about format, like what are the document type is supported, JPG, PNG, GIF. You may only see, so in the requirement they're defining you may only upload a maximum size of 1 megabyte, right, in this 3 format. Now as a tester, So that's a good exercise, guys. So in this requirement, they're saying, right? This requirement, they're saying you may only have maximum size of 1 megabyte, and these are 3 supported format. Now, when you're testing this, right, how would you test it? Anyone is here able to give me some example? How would you test it?
So we have several ways to test that. So first of all, we're gonna try with the requirement. Let me see the requirement. Which one? The image. Okay, so first we're gonna try the image of JPG format. We're gonna input that, upload it. If it is go through, then we are good. It's positive, and we need to check the sizes also. If it is 1 megabyte required, then it has to be 1 megabyte. If it is more than 1 megabyte and it's still uploading, that means there's a defect. And all the formats we need to check one by one with the sizes as well. That's how we can check.
Thank you, Maksud. Very good examples. So what Maksud is saying, what we're going to do here when we're testing this, we're going to test negative and positive scenarios. And how do you do those? Your positive scenarios are defined here. So what you're going to do, you're going to have 3 different type of documentation: JPG, PNG, GIF. These are 3 different type of documentation. All of your documentation, you're going to make sure the sizes are below this 1 megabyte. And once you perform your testing using these formats and this size for each one of them, your positive testing is done. Now we need to focus on negative testing because your requirement specifies only this 1 megabyte and this 3, right? Format. Now you're going to grab other format like PDF. You're going to try to upload it here. The expectation is they should say the file is not supported. That's the expectation. Now, if you do that, now you know your application recognizes what is supported and what is not supported. So that's your negative testing. You're gonna do other things, image or document, Excel sheet. You're gonna try to upload those and make sure that your application reject. You're gonna try to upload something that is more than 1 megabyte, even within the supported format, and also outside of the supported format. So there are so many different scenarios as a tester you need to consider when you're testing this, right? So that's how you become a tester. That's how you become a good tester, when you think like this. All right, continuing. Then this is another small requirement within this. And these are the fields, and it's defining everything here for you. What are the different fields and everything. Then you have another requirement, emergency contact. So you can see how an application gets built, right? When you see different module, different functionality in an application. Think about an application. Think about Facebook. I'm saying Facebook because all of you know it, all of you use it. If you look at that application, all the different module functionality, clickable features, it gets written just like this, broken into a category, and then it gets built just like it's defined here. So you get the idea, right? All of this is here. All this, everything you're seeing is requirement, and you need to tackle one by one, not everything at once. You need to understand one part at a time and move on. While you're reviewing, how do you review and understand? So again, guys, we're in this phase, analysis of the requirement, and we're doing analysis of the requirement right now. Okay, right? So how do you analyze the requirement? By reading and understanding. Now, if something doesn't make sense, write it down. Ask questions to business analysts. Ask questions to the team, the appropriate team. Make sure you are clear before you test an application. So you get the idea. Let's continue reading on requirement analysis and how do you do that. So analyzing the requirement test team analyze or studies the requirement for testing point of view to identify the testable requirements. If anything is missing or not understandable, then quality assurance team meets with the stakeholders or generates a query log to better understand the details about the requirement. So this is the definition of analyzing the requirement. So the idea behind it, for you to be crystal clear on the requirement. If you're not clear, seek help, ask questions, write down your questions, send it to appropriate person. When you write that, when you have requirement like this, like I was showing you, many pages long, the chances are you're going to have many questions. So what you need to do is create a query log. Query log is nothing but list of your questions. If you have multiple team members working in a project, combine all of your questions. Once that is in place, send it to appropriate person. Usually is the business analyst who is responsible for the requirement. So we're going to practice this here. We're going to create our query logs as well, where we'll give you a requirement to understand and analyze. And once you do that, you're going to have questions. And when you have questions, we're going to ask you to write it down in an Excel sheet so that it is maintained properly. Okay. Analysis of the requirement. Again, let's talk a little bit more about this. So when you're reading through requirement, when you're analyzing the requirement, you need to, the things you need to focus on, hey, is this requirement clear? Is this requirement testable? Is it unique? Make sure there is no duplicates. Is there any ambiguity there? Is it bounded? And yeah, so these are the keywords. Is it tested? Is it clear? Is it bounded? Is it is there an ambiguity? So you need to focus on that. And last time when I said, is it testable? I can give you some example, right? Some requirements is not testable. Since we talked about this one, if I tell you right here, we have this feature, right, where you can upload files. Now, if they didn't define supported type of the file and the supported size of the file, we have limited number of supported files, let's say 8, 10, which is testable, you can test it. But when it comes to size, there is no limit, right? If they don't define it, how would you test it? You can't test, right? So similarly, every single requirement needs to have proper boundaries, proper requirement behind it. There should not be any ambiguity, right? So when you're reading through requirements, just make sure that your requirement is, number one, is clear, like this one is very clear. Number two is testable. Number three is bounded, right? Right here, they give you a boundary, right? The size is 1 megabyte. So all of these things, you as a tester, you need to read, understand, and don't think automatically they'll give it to you. There are people working just like you are working, and they're trying to get away with as less as possible. No one wants to do more than they have to. But some cases, you need to go and tell them, hey, you didn't do this. You didn't do your job properly. So please go ahead and add more details. And that is totally fine, right? That person, business analyst, he or she know most of it or everything because they're interacting with the client. You are not interacting with the client. You are inside the industry, inside the company. Now, that person thinks I know everything, so maybe everybody knows everything. So I don't need to be very detailed. I can just write a couple of lines. And you would be surprised. There are so many companies, when they write requirements, it does not make sense. It is so brief. It is so limited. It's not even fair to even look into it. And I've been victim of it. Everybody that is a tester or developer, they have been victimized for the longest time. Now, industry is changing. They want to have proper requirement. That's why they have best practices. But don't be surprised when you walk into a company, they give you requirement and it's not complete. Raise your hand, raise your voice, say, hey, thank you for this requirement, but I think more information is needed. Can you define more? Can you add more information so that it makes sense, so that we understand it's clear? If you're not able to write it, let's have a meeting, explain to us, and I'll take a note. So something like this has to be done, and you always need to understand that if something goes wrong, right, you are part of the team. Your responsibility to understand what we're building here. Your responsibility to know ins and out of this requirement. And the only way you would know when you speak out, when you seek for more information, when you're not shy. And being shy is doesn't get you anywhere, even in this class. So we need you to be a leader. We want to build you as a leader, and companies wants to hire leaders. So start practicing, understanding, and executing on that. Okay, with this, we will conclude our requirement analysis phase, which is the first phase, this phase right here. So understand, right, when a requirement is given to you, or when you have access, when you're able to access the requirement, your first thing is to start analyzing the requirement, make sure that requirement is testable, is unique, is clear, there's no ambiguity, it's bounded. All of these things are there. Then only you can go into your next phase, which is the planning phase. So we'll learn about test planning phase next week. This week we're gonna end it here. Do you guys have any questions or concerns? Okay, I'm gonna stop recording so that